the directions, like I'm not doing whatever it is I'm doing, you've been experimenting with those a bit, right?
Yeah.
And I
Hmm.
think we could add a couple more at this
I
point.
love it.
And um, let's do one with you walking, just because you have those shoes, the
I
special
got them
shoes.
ready.
All
I'll
right.
switch to them.
Yeah. Let's do one with
Harry, I'm on the Zoom. Head down to the basement, okay? My son just got home from play practice.
yeah.
All right, getting the shoes on.
Yeah, and we'll just start with you standing in the back. The same kind of thing we did last time. You
Okay.
might move the chair off to one side.
Okay.
And again, the walking, we're using walking just because it's convenient. It's not that this is not Alexander technique is not per se a better way to walk, although it is, but it's a better way to
Okay.
do everything. I just want to, it's just kind of a little reminder that it's
Sure.
just a convenient activity to use.
Okay.
Okay, so if you were to, why don't you walk to the camera and back, and without any Alexander thinking, but with a little bit of interest again in the sound of your footfalls, and maybe a little bit of interest in what those footfalls feel like.
Sure.
So
Okay.
just walk to the camera and back with that, and turn and go back to that door. So you've got that registered a bit, right? What
Yeah.
it sounded like, what it felt like. Now we're going to have another direction that's going to seem very off the wall. You ready
I
for
love it.
Great.
Okay, let's do it.
So in the ones we were using before was type thing directions like I'm not walking as I'm walking, or I'm not chopping vegetables as whatever. How
Yes.
about exploring this on the way to the camera until it's time to turn around? And then once you have turned around, just switch over to a nonsense direction to clear it
Sure.
away. And this direction is we're going to leave, it's like the one before, but we're going to leave off something. So, how about I'm not doing?
Okay. I'm not doing.
Yep.
I'm not doing.
Yep, that's it. Don't worry what it
Okay.
means. Just think it lightly.
Okay.
If you, as always, if you find yourself thinking about something else, or maybe getting very interested in something that's happening, that could happen, just say, no, I want to stay with this thought lightly for those few seconds that I'm walking towards the camera.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good. I'm
I'm
not
not,
doing.
I'm not doing.
I'm not doing.
Okay, and then I'm green. Now, were those walks enough to give you some information?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty evident that my normal walk is a heavier feel. It's a louder clack of the heel first. There's more just weight to it versus like when I'm not doing, for some reason, my brain is able to do what it does and it just like there's less pressure on the heel.
Right, exactly.
So it's just
So
lighter.
think about how interesting that is. I'm not doing, and why don't we sit down and I'll run through the other one with you that you can experiment on your own, because we don't need to. I think you're learning how to do the testing,
I'm not.
how to be in
Uh-huh.
testing mode. And
Hmm.
again, with any of these new directions, do some testing with them, but don't feel like once you've done that for a few days that you need to do it unless you happen to feel like doing it. In other words,
Right.
you really just want to use the direction for little periods of time.
Okay.
You don't have to keep throwing it away. Just a little historical note. Uh, FM Alexander, the developer of this work, has a quote somewhere. I'll try to find it. And he says basically, if you have, if you're you, if you're using, I think he talked in terms of constructive thinking. He used that kind of phrase to indicate that you were doing something to bring about a change. It was a very useful exercise to throw it away, to
Mm.
just use it, not use it, and maybe not, deliberately throwing it away for a couple of reasons. One is the kind of the testing process we're talking about, although honestly, I don't think he actually ever talked about that kind of testing. But another, I think, equally important reason for throwing it away is that you throw it away, you might notice something happening, you might not. Either way, you've learned something, and then you can just come back to the direction on the go. And
Mhm.
the idea is that he's saying you don't need to get ready to direct. You don't need to, you can put out a direction right in the middle of any activity.
Of whatever you're doing. Just think it.
Exactly.
Just
Walking,
lightly think it.
you could be in front of your 60 kids classroom and realize that maybe a little a little Alexander nudge would be useful. And
Hmm.
you choose whichever one you want, whichever one comes to mind, even doesn't matter that much. And you just bring it, you don't even, you could do it in the middle of a sentence.
Yeah.
And just add this. It's like adding a little seasoning to I don't know, a stew.
So on Sundays, I lead worship at a pretty contemporary church, and
Uh-huh.
we've got all this sound equipment, and everything's fancy. You've got your in-ear monitors, and
Yeah,
I play the keyboard and I sing. And um, I've often been trying this, like I've the last few weeks, like integrating these Alexander thoughts,
yeah,
honestly as often as I can without making myself like overconsumed by it. But it's it's tricky because I'm playing the piano and then the mic's here, then I feel like the mic's not in a good spot. So then I'm like doing this like reach, trying to get my mouth to the mic, and then trying to think about my fingers and trying to turn the Apple screen. And I found myself thinking, I'm free.
mhm.
Just just free up. Just free up. And it definitely helps, but I can sense like in that setting, I haven't allowed myself enough practice in that setting.
Yeah. You see, so that's the setting, the way you describe it, where there's a lot going on.
Yeah,
So your prefrontal cortex is kind of maxed out in terms of things that it can attend to.
honestly,
So
yes.
it will be a while before it's just this simple little add-on of I'm free, or I'm this last one I'm not doing, or I'm not singing, or not playing. Um, I think the best place to really become very at home with them and able to bring them to bear at an instant's notice would be somewhat less stressful situations. Not that use it there too. Just bear in
Hmm.
mind that you're probably it'll take a little time before it'll be something very easy to do without you having to be worried about the
Hmm.
how many things. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. So, so that's one direction I'm not doing. One thing, just to add on to that a little, you might want to experiment with is especially if you have like a little longer walk area or a longer period of time to do some testing, you might want to explore if you find there's any difference between I'm not doing on the one hand, this very short direction, and two other related directions, which I don't necessarily think you need to use in general, but would be interesting to see if you notice a difference. So I'm not doing anything, and I'm not doing everything.
Mm,
I think what you're going to find is that those two, and I'm not doing, produce pretty similar results. It's the, and if they do produce pretty similar, maybe identical results, um, then you're probably better off in general using the shortest version. I'm not doing because it's short.
hmm.
Shorter is always better because it quicker,
Yeah,
it takes up less energy from up here, from
yes.
your brain. Um, but if you do notice that they're pretty much the same, then you might ask yourself, what are the implications of that?
Mm,
Everything, anything.
right.
Yeah, it just has a little,
Mm, doing
it's
everything.
more as a kind of a really having some understanding of how directions work and how they mean, what they mean to your unconscious brain.
Yes. Well, when was practicing with the audiobook a couple weeks ago, I think I told you,
Hmm.
I was playing with um the thought of less effort, just give less effort. And then I
Right.
looked at my sticky note I had left from something you said, and you had said no effort. And for whatever reason, there
Right.
was a big shift for me
Yeah. Yeah.
because
And we
I
did
think,
talk about that, right? And
yeah,
no effort. I think what your unconscious mind took from that was, I'm just speculating here. You say I'm not
hmm,
making any effort to read this book, right? I think your unconscious mind said, well, that I like it. I like the idea of that. And it certainly applies to you addressing me, the unconscious mind, because we or I, whatever it likes to call itself, um, wants to hear from you,
mm,
wants to know what you want, but it most definitely doesn't want you to do anything once you've told it what you want.
yeah,
And so it didn't take it as I'm not doing anything to read this book because it knows that you know that it knows that you
obviously
know that you've got
it
to
knows.
do
Yeah,
something. You got to do a little bit of effort to read
yes.
the book. You're not going to get an activity for free, no energy putting into it. You're not going to, when you're walking, of course, even more, you have to do some work to walk. But the question is, are you doing too much or are you doing some of the wrong kind and so on? And that's what directions will help you with.
Hmm.
Now, here's the next direction.
Okay.
And both these directions, the one the I'm not doing and the one we're going to explore next, I will say are the only two directions that I would take any credit for developing. And they're quite new, but they do seem to work pretty well. And so here's the next one. And why don't we use that? Why just so you're sitting and yeah, I'm not thinking.
That one almost made my brain explode. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
my
not
God.
thinking. Did I think too
Yes.
hard?
Yeah, but what did you, besides the danger of your head exploding, what else did you notice?
I'm not thinking. Um, it made me, for a brief moment, aware, well, then what am I doing?
Right? Yeah.
It just for a moment I just was very aware of the table and the computer.
Hmm. And I think if you use that direction in the same way we've been talking about the others, testing them with walking and other activities, I think you'll find it has very similar effects. And the thing about I'm not thinking that I think is especially useful is that well, a couple of things. One, any action you do, any doing that you do, is you're doing it because there was a thought somewhere, maybe not consciously, that I want to do it. You know,
Right.
and so I'm not thinking is getting closer to the root of things. Do you understand what I
Hmm.
mean by that? If you can change, if you can release less useful ways of thinking, there's going to be a lot more room for useful ones.
Right.
And my experience is that, and this, I've been using this now for about half a year roughly. So it's, I've done a lot with students and myself. I always test these out on myself, and I test them out with one of my colleagues. You may have seen some of the videos with Imogen.
Yeah.
She and I use her as a guinea pig a lot for some of these directions. Um, that it's a pretty powerful direction. And I think what I think your unconscious mind takes from it is I'm not thinking, you're saying, meaning I'm not thinking in the way that I am thinking right now. I'd like better thoughts.
Hmm.
And the unconscious mind said, okay. It might say, well, I see two or three thoughts that we could ditch right away and help
Hmm.
out. And, you
Pick
know,
off the low fruit.
low hanging fruit, um, and just to give you a little bit of a historical reason why I think this is such a useful thing. Alexander, the developer of this work, in in his writings, talked a lot, especially in his second book. I had a whole section on what he called mind wandering. And
Hmm.
he viewed that as one of the most harmful things that we could be doing, that we could be our our mind can go to all kinds of weird, stupid, not helpful, maybe harmful places, kind of almost it's seemingly on its own. I mean,
Yes.
you probably noticed, I've certainly noticed,
Oh yeah.
I'll get into a state about something, right?
Hmm.
Some issue I've had uh was, and I'm thinking, even though I really don't want to be drawn into it particularly, I keep thinking, oh, that person, how can I get back at him, or how can I prevent,
Hmm.
and all that, and it's just useless stuff. It
Right.
has serves no useful purpose.
Hmm.
And he felt that that was one of, if not the most serious obstacle for people.
Hmm.
Um, there's a whole big section on it. I'll see if I
Oh,
can
yeah.
find the video with Imogen when I talked about
Yeah.
that.
I love that.
So just play with the thought, though. While you're using a direction, it's not a time to get into the weeds about why it works or does it works or doesn't work. Just use it and see what happens.
Got it. I'm not thinking.
Right.
Yeah, I like that. I've even been doing some personal study over the last 6 months or so, both from some of my favorite biblical teachers, but also through some brain neurologists who have talked a lot about this very thing.
Hmm.
They all have a different name for it, like the the psychologist, or the not the psychologist, the brain neurologist was calling them ants, like obtrusive something. They're obtrusive thoughts, and then like the biblical, person was talking about how you need to gird up your mind and say no to the random thoughts. And I mean, it's a
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. I don't think Alexander was the first person to realize that, but he was realizing it in the context of the kind of work he was doing.
Hmm.
Not religious work, not
Hmm.
scientific work, study
Hmm.
movement. How do we move? How do
Yeah.
we sit, stand,
Yeah.
and move kind of work. And
Yes.
um, he just in the section of that book, he goes on and on about it. It's a biggie
Hmm.
for him. So
I like that.
I think thinking, I'm not thinking, is a way to help with that. Imogen's first reaction is funny because she said, I love just how paradoxical that is because you are thinking, I'm not thinking.
I'm not thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of, I think, almost the ultimate paradoxical direction.
Hmm.
So play with it,
Would you
have fun with
would
it.
you recommend using that while doing anything, or
Yeah.
do you
Oh,
recommend?
any of this can be used doing anything. The one caveat I would have, do you have staircases in your house?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so you might want to experiment with using some of these directions in climbing a staircase and then going back down. And if you, for example, thought, well, I'm going to use a direction for roughly halfway up, and then I'll switch over to a nonsense direction. And then you think, well, I'll do the same thing going down. Do you have a handrail by the stage?
Yes.
Yeah. Have your hand on the handrail going down, especially just lightly, because if you change your manner of walking or descending, we don't want you to trip and fall over. So just be a little cautious, and
Right.
any activity where the stakes are a little higher, so maybe I tell people when they're using these directions for the first little while, maybe not the best thing to use on I-80 when it's raining and you're trying to pass a tractor trailer truck, you
Got
know,
it. Got
when
it.
you really don't want to introduce some new thing here right at that moment
Got
until
it.
you've had more experience using it in less dramatic situations.
Yeah, like when I started thinking I am free well on the cycling bike at the YMCA and about fell off.
That's safe, right? No, would you
I
do
held
that?
on to the handles.
Oh, yeah, have your hand, at least have your hands on the handle.
I slipped a little.
But it may be even a light loop around the handle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
anything like
Right.
that. But
Okay.
otherwise, yeah, anything. I mean, and also, I mean, I think you probably have figured this out, but I'm just going to say this. You don't, it's not like you want to go around all day self-directing.
Hmm.
Marge Barstow once said, I sent you a link to her
Yeah,
page.
I checked it out.
Yeah. Someone asked her on one of her workshops, well, Marge, I guess we should be doing this all the time, right? And Marge said, no, you don't want to go around thinking about freeing your neck or letting your neck be free all the time. That would be incredibly boring. That was her way of putting it. But I think what she was also saying is you could get a little too intense about it, and you don't need to do that. You don't need to do it, and it's probably gonna get a little in the way
Yeah.
because you're very likely to get a little pushy with it if you think I've got to
Mhm.
do it all the time. You don't want that.
Yeah.
You just want the lightest the lightest statement about what you'd like, delivered
Yeah.
without any expectations would be an ideal way of
Mm.
being. There's a little thread right now on the Facebook group where I put up a quote by Marge who said, I think what it was her phrase, what you should be doing is experiment. And she used the should word too, by the way, I have to say, shouldn't have used it. Yeah, you should be experimenting, not anticipating the result, or something like that. And
Mm.
or you should be let yourself be surprised. I think maybe that was her word. And I gotta say, a lot of teachers love that idea. Um, surprise. Some teachers,
Let yourself be
that
surprised.
is kind of what we're teaching.
Mm.
Not preordained what's going to happen, but surprise. Like I think
Yeah.
we saw it and things got easier. That's kind of a surprise.
It's been a surprise for me.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no reason before Alexander Technique, like I can tell you right now, if I hadn't have done this, regardless of everything that I think I knew how to do, my voice would be hurting every day. It would hurt every day.
Yeah.
And it doesn't hurt every day. I'm more aware of when it's getting tired. And
Hmm.
then I think thoughts like, you know what, just give a little less effort. Just give a little less effort and don't overthink it.
Or
Don't
one
stress.
or the other direction, any direction.
Yeah.
They're all basically taking you to the same place, but
Mm.
different ones kind of resonate with you more, and it's good. You don't want to use a direction that makes you kind of uncomfortable or feeling like you got to figure out what it means or any of that stuff, because you just
Mhm.
you want something that's you enjoy using because hey, it seems to produce
Yeah.
good things.
That's a good way to know, just knowing that like one of these might resonate more with me than other ones, and just being surprised by what resonates more. When you find what resonates more, use it a little more frequently,
And
but
but
keep
be
exploring.
open to shifting what your favorite one is over time.
Hmm.
You
Okay.
might discover suddenly you've kind of you maybe you get a little tired of one. I'll use another one.
Mm.
See how that works. You might, yeah, it's there are no rules. There's no rules
Mhm.
here at all. Okay,
Oh,
so any questions about anything we talked about today?
no, I know I'm going to continue working on constructive rest and playing a little bit with the environment,
Hmm.
trying no sound. And then once I get the hang of that, I might go back and look up some of those teachers who have done like audios of their like coached constructive rest.
Yeah, there's
I
lots of
might
them.
dig into that.
There's lots of them.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm going
so
to play more with I'm not doing
yep.
versus I'm not doing anything or I'm not doing everything.
Yeah, just I think just so it'll be interesting to see what you notice. My guess is that you'll notice they pretty much are equivalent. And that in itself is pretty interesting. So
Yeah.